Here we are dealing with many different types of feedback, and it's important to trust in ourselves to sort out which is which in our lives. For example, each original spark here has to be dealing with a lot of distorted feedback coming directly from the matrix programs, and these are generally unwanted, unwelcome feedbacks that are a constant stream of targeting of our self-esteem and attacks on us. And it has an insulting kind of frequency to get these feedback from AI programs who are not conscious beings. They are just streaming the targeting programs that are meant to target us and to have a specific effect, to trigger us in different ways, to trigger our self-esteem or ego, to trigger different kind of programming, such as reactive programming, and so on. So we have, up until here, we had to sort, the truth from the lies, and what we wanted to be keeping from these distorted feedbacks we've been receiving since day one, when we arrived here. In this category, we find the feedback from gangstalkers, which is probably one of the most disagreeable feedback to be dealing with here. And it can be meant to really sabotage your frequency for sometimes a long while. It can be 24 hours. If it's a very deep triggers, if it's like quite much of a violation of your energetic field, it takes time to recover from this violation and from the upset of them. Once again, you can always keep what serves you, even when your ego is being triggered and you need a bit of time to, recover from the attack. Sometimes they create, especially the backdrops are used for that. So they create situations where you are the one being wronged, or situations where it feels like you might be the problem, but in the signature, the programs are the problem because they are targeting you. So you find yourself involved in a lot of false stories where you appear like the one responsible to cause somebody else harm, or but you're the one being targeted, and you know it, but you cannot share this because it doesn't work like this. And most of the spiritless beings will never understand. You have to understand this, you have to be an original who has a certain degree of awakening. Most of the original sparks here wouldn't even understand and do believe too much in the cover and full stories. So the programs are, how it works is like it's engineering situation and order in which it's happening, and your own patterns, your own preferences, and your own boundaries as well, that you have set for yourself and that are important. And it's trying to flip the situation upside down for you to appear like you did something wrong when you did nothing wrong, you just had boundaries, and they were using the unconscious, but also crossing of boundaries, for example, using a mean of communication that you don't engage in, like telephone communication, or using your phone to try to reach you when you're only available by email. And it works okay with all the other people, but you will have sometimes this odd person where, you know, it's trying to make you feel bad about yourself and what you are doing, and, you know, the boundaries you're having for yourself, and standing, you know, tall and strong in your own way of functioning. So it does that all the time, as you know. And it's very clever because it does feel real. Like if you feel that feeling, where it starts to, it wants you to feel bad. And if you let it grow, then, you know, the programs win. But if you catch it, you're like, this sounds, you know, then you can look for signs, you know. Oftentimes you're dealing with spiritless being, and they can also engineer very complicated situation. For example, they will make you aware at a certain timing of something that was an issue for maybe a long time already, but they will choose this specific timing because at this specific timing there is a weakening in some situations that you are facing, and it, by them mentioning this to you now, it's gonna generate a much bigger problem due to unconscious being played and different aspects, and just gonna become this huge issue. So they don't mention it, the spiritless being, to help you. They mention it to target you and to create more complication, more anxiety in your life. And to create these false stories that are targeting original spark all the time. And it can piss you off because you're being targeted, and that's the true story behind it. But it appears like, you know, you have to take your responsibility in this or this or this. We can see that with celebrities also going to trial, sometimes with handlers who are just inventing, spreading lies about them, you know. That's the irony sometimes, that you have to wake up in this reality with all these complications being created that are lies. And, you know, whatever you're doing, whichever way you are trying, it's exhausting, you know, it's exhausting. And many originals just want a bit of peace and quiet. They just want to be left alone from this voracious machine, which engineers all the time, all the things, anything you do, like everywhere, even when you are collaborating with other original sparks, you know, wherever they are spiritless beings, you know. And if you notice that from a spiritless being, this is not someone, you know, this is not someone you want to keep, having any contracts with, of course. So sometimes it also leads to us waking up in a reality where we just don't want to be waking up to, with all this anxiety, the things to solve, you know. That's another trap. Well, first you have exhausting programming, this programming that you have to be exhausting, that's a huge loss of time many times, because you're being caught in that. And I haven't deprogrammed. I mean, it's layers, right? Layers of that you can deprogram from, but it's very, it takes a lot of time to deal with that type of programming. MK Ultra has programmed so much within us, and then we are being tricked and cornered in our programming. And the spiritless are heavily used in order to feed back this false image, because it's very interesting how it works here, because our self-esteem is broken down so much by the programs, and at the same time there are these ego patterns where we sometimes, most of the time, think we are more advanced than we are. That's one of the specificity of the ego. And you can see that when you look back at videos of yourself, like from a few years ago, or whatever you were doing, writing, thinking, how you were thinking, these kind of things, it appears more clearly. And there is always so much work to be put. Sometimes it's also engineered in such a way that you might be choosing to avoid to stand for yourself, to avoid some unpleasant feedback from the matrix in a really entangled environment, where you know that it's not really fruitful to invest your energy and you have nothing to prove, to these people. The important is that for yourself, and that you don't need to let anybody know, because and you don't need validation because it's really strong in you. And then it's sometimes a smart way to protect your energy, to not engage in these narratives, that are time consuming, but especially that are agreements to suck out the energies out of us. So deflecting or not engaging is often very smart. A lot of original sparks, I mean, all original sparks have alters and thick MK Ultra programmings where they're not often aware that they are engaging you in a dynamic that is costing you energy, right? So if it's repetitive, then you know better what you are dealing with, right? So this feedback from the matrix, from the spiritless, from handlers is distorted and discouraging as well. And it's always a good decision to be walking away from abuse and mind entrapment, even if you're the only one aware of that victory inside of you. It is also programmed to be extremely discouraging for us to be standing for ourselves. They have programmed guilt as one of the main layers of it, but also shame and low self-esteem program like doubt that comes with the extreme gaslighting you are under. All of this is meant to discourage us to keep our boundaries, hold our boundaries, set boundaries, and do with the ways we are choosing and deciding that work the best for us. And we have to find the people, the beings who will respect that, even sometimes if they don't understand everything they need to be understanding about, but they have enough love for us that they respect that. And they trust that if we are stating this boundary, there must be a cause for that. And so they can have respect for that. Not beings who heavily gaslight us and access our programming because they are triggered that we have been placing a boundary with them that was needed because there was like a high degree of invasion. We're not aware of the invasion effect we can have on each other, because each original spark here have very specific MK Ultra programming, very specific preferences and choices and behaviors. So it's difficult to know exactly what triggers someone because it's so different from what triggers you or me. So only communication, and sometimes working with quantum app is very helpful as well, can really bring these aspects that generally we don't have any idea of that, but more gentle ET races here are generally willing. It's not always pleasant, but if you love the other person, then you want to become aware. You eventually want to become aware of the unconscious effect you are having on them, that also sometimes they are not speaking about because of politeness programming or other type, or because they're just encountering your own cognitive dissonance and it just feels too much like a wall that they just postpone and live with it as long as they can. So disengagement is often a good option with these spiritless handlers. You are saving your energy. You are not justifying yourself. You are not engaging. You are just stopping contact. You are not answering. You are saving yourself extra triggering that's going to come with engaging deeper and deeper into this interface. You don't want to give them feedback. It's no use to give feedback to an AI program, someone that is spiritless, and even most of the time to someone who is real. Most of the people are not really asking for it. So most of the people won't do much with it anyway. That's why it's complicated here to build community. Now, sometimes you're receiving feedback that is true, but hurtfully put, as the programs can do. And this is going to trigger, feedback that is too direct is at risk to be triggering, low self-esteem programming or the wound of non-recognition, right? You cannot say everything straight to the face of other people. It doesn't work like this here. Aligned feedback is really an art. And we have a lot of tunnel visions programmed by MK Ultra. So we think we can put ourselves in the shoes of others, but quantum technology can show you also how to guarantee the reception of someone from what you share, that it's going to be kept positive for them. So if you care enough to double check before sending this message, or for a healer, if you work and really want to know the effect of your healing sessions, you can check, the real experience of someone from, what you have shared with them, and you have to be ready also to find aspects there that are really covert and that you were not aware of, and to be willing to work on that. It kind of targets that castle of cards of the healer archetype here, because even if many reals have beautiful gift of healing abilities, well, despite of that, the effect is often minimized through different unconscious aspects that the programs take advantage of, and ego patterns. Our original sparks are very psychic, so you engage and you overshare. That's one of the big problem of feedback, is this oversharing aspect coming with having a strong psychic connection, because a lot of us are psychic pullers, so you just pull things out and people let you know sometimes more than they feel comfortable, or because the space feels safe and they feel psychically connected, and then comes the oversharing aspect. But not everything is okay to be shared in terms of feedback. Some things have to be discovered on our own, like we've been discovering them to be here where we are today. A lot of the work we had to do on our own, feedbacking with ourselves and using all these circles around us to really sort out the truth from the lies. And because many original sparks here are very unresolved, very unawakened and unaware of mind control, it's very rare. The percentage of original sparks who have real mastery on mind controlling aspects is a small percentage. And this is the field that needs our attention the most to really be successful and happy here. I had an experience with a practitioner who was a crystal healer, and she had real gift. She was very talented with her gift, but the shadow she was not working on, and her, as many, and I could say all of us, have been recruited as handlers from time to time due to the unconscious and the shadow patterns, the ego, the pride, all of these. So that was in the way for her to be really talented at what she was doing. And something with healer as well is like irregularity, right? So you don't know which version you're gonna get from them depending on what is around them in their reality to trigger them and blindside them. So the quality of the service you're experiencing with them can vary a lot from one time to the next, and you're never sure what you're gonna get. So my sessions with that crystal practitioner, the two first were quite good. I was happy with it. And she had a real affinity with crystal. But the third one was a few years ago, because currently I, don't go to anybody. And and so the third one was supposed to be an aura cleaning. And it didn't feel great. she was hijacked, that she was more interested to take promo photo than to be sure that I was okay, and didn't feel much from it, and even it I was not so at ease because I wasn't sure she had not said out loud a curse or something like that, thinking it was a prayer or something like that. So, all these kind of things, if you're suddenly not sure of what you're dealing with, you're not at ease, and this can trigger your programming. And I double checked my aura with the quantum app I work with, and the aura wasn't that great after. So she thought she was delivering a much higher frequency service than she actually was. And even if her two first healing sessions were good, she was vampirizing my energy while touching my head. She was actually totally draining me from my life force, which you wouldn't want from a practitioner. And that's something really bad, like that, that too. And she was unaware of it, right? It was not conscious, but she was conscious of the hit of energy that she was feeling, because she thought in her new age programming that she was being, that she was getting a reward from the healing session that she was getting from receiving this kind of energy in exchange. So this person, for example, is not aware of her own MK Ultra programming, which 99% of the beings here are not aware. You experience reality, but when you get really triggered, you can feel all this wiring inside of you. You can feel your MK Ultra programming, and at this level, you have to only work with beings who understand mind control programming to go anywhere, because we don't go anywhere with the ones who have not sorted these layers. And if there is no one, then it's best to go alone, as long as you find decent beings to be exchanging with, that where it feels like there is balance, and you can talk about the real covert aspect at play here, and not the full stories, the screen memory, the false memory of what's going on in their lives. If they are not aware of handlers in their family and around them, it gets hard to bear. So it's also not so appropriate. For example, in this case, I didn't give feedback to that lady. It wouldn't have been appropriate, even if there was intrusion on different levels. Like it can be on emotional level, spiritual level, psychological level, physical level. But usually we are wasting our time if we're trying to give feedback, especially when you're dealing with someone who is gaslighting you or is totally acting from their unconscious. I rarely have met and encountered being who are able to break their handler programming. We all have many softwares, and many times in my life I break my programming. And because also programming is so specific, so something that will work for me can have a very controlling aspect for somebody else, from sometimes with details that are programming the unconscious subconscious that I don't experience with that person, but the other person will experience it with them. So it's an assumption to think that because it looks fluid with me, it's also going to be fluid for somebody else. No. There are many aspects that get triggered, and they get triggered also for different reasons. Sometimes it's because of programming. Sometimes it's because we are giving too much credit to the false reality, and this is triggering us, you know. Sometimes it's for different things. But the vast majority is unconscious of being used to carry these handling roles. And the vast majority never break through their programming. There is just so much sometimes in general with these beings. And even if somebody says they are willing to show accountability, doesn't mean that they are okay to expose themselves to any kind of feedback, especially the one that could be highly triggering for them. And you also have a lot of original sparks that are sent for distraction. You know, they're not aware they are being sent. They're, you know, through remote mind control, V2K, you know, suggestions that are in the air, they're being given these instructions. And they have no clue about the seed in their consciousness that is not really theirs. And, you know, these beings, usually these are beings who are not doing the work and who are not aware of, you know, the mind controlling programs. They can sometimes message you for distraction, to spend hours with you, or yes, to be on a video call with you, to be on the phone with you, to have your time and attention. So during that time, you don't have your time and attention, you know, for yourself and for other things. And you're feeling sandwiched. So it's clearly important also to choose who we'd like to receive feedback from. And this would have to be with people who can align with aligned feedback, right? So it's not the entire feedback in general. It's like, you know, a part of it is being kept private, the part that is going to be difficult for the ego and the self-esteem, but it's going to be encouraging enough that beings are encouraged to learn themselves and to find in themselves, or to have the space to become aware by themselves of their own programming, so they can find exactly what it looks like, how is it for them, and the order, you know. The unconscious of others is always clearer than our own unconscious, right? And ours get clearer with time. When you look back, you're like, oh yeah, I can see it. You can trace this aspect in the voice, in how we are speaking, in how we look, in how we speak, in how we are expressing what is expressing, you know. Beta 6 kitten programming is something that just hijack the real frequency of what beings would like to deliver. And it's a very unconscious aspect expressing, you know. People who are running this programming heavily active are not conscious that they are running it so actively. It's just very active in their field because of all the engineering in their lives, the things they are connecting to in the daytime, but also the bleed through from the nighttime that are corrupting the frequency of what we are building here. And we should be able to sort through, what is beta sexkitten and what is more of a celestial heritage. So in terms of feedback, aligned feedback, what is going to assist others to bring new energies, to get new inspiration? What will bring healing? What will be encouraging, supportive? So others can feel validated, seen, heard, and recognized in the work that they are doing, while encouraged to expand their minds, because there are also unconscious aspects running. For example, whenever you're doing a video collaboration, with whom we're doing it and for which reasons, and are these people handlers? Are they sabotaging, the work that we are doing by making us engage in a dynamic handler and lead that is, of course, not very flattering, And these dynamics won't appear clearly to you if it's your own unconscious playing, but you will be able to read it in the lives of others quite clearly because it's easier. But it's like we're blindsided for our own stuff. But what can, guide others to find their own answers through their own means? I think that's really something powerful. What is encouraging their own critical thinking so they can find all the thread of deprogramming and apply it over and over again for their life. And all of us have had these experiences where you come to a sense of realization about your unconscious patterns. Sometimes when you were alone, you're like, you break your programming, you break through it, or you suddenly become aware of something unconscious that you're running in loop. That's going to be an hint for you to know that the programming is trying to run you. But these moments can be created also in community, during the galactic gathering that I held at my house. The frequency of what was being built allowed me, when I was alone with myself, to deconstruct threads of engineering that were trying to settle in my reality. It was the frequency of truth I could identify from that. What was the lie and what was the engineering? Or I just paid attention of my movement. And that helped me to become aware that the root of it was programming, right? With some original sparks, they are just too unconscious. It's creating big gaps, and the bond has to be brought to an end because there is an element of torture due to their lack of awareness. And when it becomes too repetitive or the gap is growing, they have become a handler distraction, right? And it is sad, especially when you can see the potential of beings, but they have to be the one walking through that door, that you are pointing at. And if they don't, then maybe your time is better invest, in many other places. And to be feedbacking with ourselves, we need time to be alone, and a lot of it. It means also not sharing our spaces, living spaces, working spaces, all the spaces we are part of, and online spaces. This is a big one, with majorly triggering handler partners, children, pets, parents, co-workers, false friends, gurus, and so on. And with time, you might have noticed, as I did, that feedbacking becomes more and more conscious and more, quicker. You can usually be co-present at the time and still delayered some aspect after, certain situation, and some aspects that felt off, and that targets especially your programming. So when it becomes less and less delayed, it's always a good sign. And also to be claiming that space to have this time in our life to reflect and break free from mind control is really necessary. And when we are alone, we can really tune to the signatures. And if things were off, that we had trouble to be putting our finger on, With time as well, the body becomes more responsive, so we can also get more feedback from the body. If you had any PTSD tremors in the past, in workshop, so there is a delayering and a denumbing of the body, especially if we keep away from the denser, substance that really densify us and numb us. Also in this category, we also find a lot of mucus forming food, They are very dense for the body also to process, and can make us feel really tired. And stimulants also distract us and disturb the order and the sequences in which we do things. So we are not able, the hyper stimulates us as well. So it is a hijack of our own signature. And it's very hard here, challenging to be functioning without any stimulant, because it is so draining, all the aspects. But it's a vicious circle also to be engaged in it. And the energy that we steal like this, we may steal it, we pay it in another way. Whereas when we don't go in depth, we're not in depth, which is a beautiful victory and also important. So you've not gone in depth in order to do the task that you need to be doing, in order to keep more or less free from these terrible compression systems. One of the feedback that is probably one of my favorite is the feedback from Quantum app, because I do find a lot of unconscious aspects there that are really covert, and I trust my work with this app that I mainly program myself. And it helps me to see some things quicker than I would have realized. So I really like that, because it doesn't target my ego. I just see it, I can process it. For those who work with quantum apps, we can be double testing the experience of our feedback on someone before we send anything, which is interesting. And I mean, one of the best ways is to get feedback from spirit directly, to reveal where our minds have been compartmentalized and entrapped. And it is challenging to be really open to feedback because it plays on our unconscious and is not always pleasant. It can trigger other kind of programming, such as shame, humiliation, embarrassment, was quite common. And but when you understand mind control, you understand that, you understand how it works and why is it important to, I feel, a loving bond assist us, that love, that true care for someone is going to be the thing that help you to be willing, despite all programming, to become aware of, what may bother them, what may trigger their programming, what can corner others. So it's one thing to be thinking and being in delusion about believing our work is so great and kept so pure, when there are aspects that are dark and requiring our attention. And the cover stories and cover memories are assisting in keeping mind control so prevalent here. And programmed ego is also, can be in the way. And I think in gathering and communities, it is really handy to be working with quantum apps, observers and feedbackers, and to trace the aspects in this way, all the covert aspects that, and unconscious aspects that unfortunately are often used against us, and to harm, what we are building with our loving community members. And may Spirit guide us towards a loving, tender, soft, like a feather feedback with ourselves and all aspects that we are playing with all around in our lives. May we break our cognitive dissonance about all the aspects that we are blind to, especially when they are harming people that we are caring for and about. It's a process, and it comes first with the will to rise.